This is Mike Taylor, CEO of Geo Expert Search and, of course, podcast host. This week's episode is a little bit different. We have the co-chair of the Geo Congress 2026, Ryan Maw, who is a principal geotechnical engineer. We discuss the Congress, we discuss the conference, we discuss data in ground engineering, and of course mentoring and the important role that it plays. Also, if you are looking to bolster your ground engineering team, then feel free to click in the show notes and book in a direct meeting with me. Also, if you're looking to perhaps move roles in the next few months, then also click the same link and we can have a discussion in relation to this and see how we can expedite your geotechnical ground engineering growth.
Right, I am ready, you are ready. Let's make history then, shall we? Or a podcast at least. So, right, for people that don't know you, can you briefly describe your backgrounds and what you do in your current company?
I build and lead high-performing teams that solve problems, most of them geotechnical, but we're consultants, we'll solve any problem. And I come to work every day and I make the world a better place. I truly have one of the best jobs in the world. I'm passionate about things that I feel make a difference, and I like to work on projects that make a difference, specifically transportation and transit. I like to give people the one thing we can't make more of, and that's time. And I want to get them home safely at the end of the day, and I'm passionate about that. The other types of projects I like to work on are water related. In the arid western US, in the desert, water is life. And I grew up in a small community where if we didn't have water, things got serious very quickly. And so I enjoy working on water projects. And last, but certainly not least, I am a proud Utah State graduate.
Nice. Okay. It's a good kind of rundown. So what's kind of been the most defining part of that for you so far?
The most defining part, I really love to work with teams, and I like to go and get stuff done. And I like to see teams grow and people change and evolve. That's really rewarding for me, Michael.
So you're based in Salt Lake City and heavily involved in Geo Congress this year. So for listeners who have not attended before, how would you describe what Geo Congress is and why it matters to the geotechnical industry?
Well, Michael, Geo Congress is an annual conference. It's held across the U.S. and Canada. Typically 1,000 to 1,500 people attend, anywhere from civil engineers to seismologists, geologists, experts in earthquake engineering, practitioners and students. It's a great event in that regard. It's put on by the Geo-Institute, which is an institute of the American Society of Civil Engineers. And the Geo-Institute is a membership organization that serves geoprofessionals with the purpose of advancing the geoprofessional community. Geo Congress is really neat because everyone comes together and shares what they're researching on, what they're working on. And I believe that it's one of the more successful conferences out there because more than other professions, geotechnical engineering relies on case studies and is innovating to different challenges that are out there. And so I think it's very popular for that reason because we come together and share knowledge and then go out and use it on projects. I might add that this Geo Congress is unique because the first Geo Congress was actually held in Logan, Utah at Utah State University. This will be the 30th anniversary of that event. And so it's coming back to Utah to celebrate 30 years. And I think it's really neat that something here that started in Utah at Utah State University has gone out and had such a worldwide impact. And it's an event that I really enjoy.
And this year will be, I suppose, extra special because I will be in attendance and we will grab a coffee or a beer when I get there. Sure. So is there any kind of misconception?
Sounds like a plan.
You ever hear?
I would say that a misconception that I've heard is that it's just for academics, that it's a research event, and it certainly is not. This year, we're going to have lots of case studies, projects from the Intermountain West that'll be of interest. And there are a lot of practitioners that present, and it'll be very interesting in that regard because we're going to have kind of the state of the art and state of the practice. And there's going to be something there for everyone, including the student competitions that are also very exciting and fun to watch.
So what are you personally working on at Geo Congress and what topics are you most focused on?
So I'm on the program committee for the conference and I'm serving as the conference co-chair. What that means is that I support the program development of the event, setup, and kind of the direction of Geo Congress, what it is we're going to be focusing on and the types of presentations we're going to see. Provide a local perspective of the event. Obviously, I'm here in Salt Lake City, so I know the area, lay of the land. And in a way, I'm an ambassador for the local community of geoprofessionals. We're going to host people from around the world and it'll be great to share some of the neat things we're doing in Salt Lake City with them. Also, I've submitted a few papers, so I'm not just here talking about doing stuff. I've submitted several papers, and I'll be presenting at the conference on technical topics. One of the things I'm looking forward to, and again, that's kind of unique this year, is they're doing a lightweight conference the day before. And I'll be participating in that as well because it's an area I'm passionate about. And if anyone here wants to learn more, you can certainly go to the website, geocongress.org, to learn more. But that's how I'll be helping.
So geotechnical engineering involves a lot of moving parts. So from field investigations, lab, engineering and reporting. How important is it that all of those parts work well together as one kind of holistic machine?
This is something I'm very passionate about, Michael. We are a data-driven industry, and our analysis, decisions, and recommendations are no better than the data that we reference. Oftentimes in an industry, you'll hear the statement, garbage in, garbage out. And if we're not collecting high-quality data from the beginning, we're not going to have good answers at the end. Think about for a second all the steps that have to be done correctly and the people involved to get good data. First, you have the driller, the CPT operator, the dilatometer operator that has to care and be committed to getting good quality samples and doing it safely. And good quality data. Really, they are the unsung heroes of our industry. Without them and collecting high quality data, we would never get anything right. Next, you have to have someone in the field who will make the right calls on where, when, and how to sample, and is committed to recording and developing accurate logs that we're going to rely on for the rest of our design. Next, you have to have a lab that is both sophisticated as well as proficient and committed to getting accurate results and doing quality work. Lastly, you have to spend the time to interpret and develop an accurate site characterization. It all comes back to data. In fact, 80% of the battle, in our firm's opinion, comes from doing those steps right. And it's amazing how if you get good data, the rest of the problem becomes simple. But if you get bad data, you're going to be fighting it the entire time. So when you look at this from a team perspective, you're relying on one another to do your job and to do the right thing and to care. And we can't make good decisions in the office when we're doing our analysis if we don't have good data to start with. The most important part.
What's kind of the difference you feel? Where do you kind of sense when it's not kind of running in its optimum? And, some of that kind of breaks down and it's not quite working correctly.
I really appreciate it when the data from the field is coming back almost in real time. And we're getting the logs on a daily basis so we can be tracking that. If you just send someone out there, hope they get the right data while they're doing the most expensive part of our work, you're going to be regretful later. And so I feel like I'm trying to track this day to day, making sure we're getting the right data, keeping an eye on the key items. And I feel like if you're not keeping track of the field studies, you're going to have challenges later.
Yeah, agreed. I think real time or as close to real time data is very useful, whether that's the pictures of a test pit or a trial pit or whatever else may be going on site, getting your logs in early to notice, issues straight away, not 1 or 2 weeks later on. And then perhaps that person has moved on to a different site, or perhaps they're a contractor and they're off onto a completely different project. So geotechnical is obviously very technical, but it involves people, communication, and judgment. So how important do you consider soft skills are in delivering good outcomes?
They're critical. As much as it's about engineering, Michael, it's not about engineering. And a quote that our chief consultant has used in the past that I really have come to appreciate, and it's by Ralph Peck. More failures of foundation or earth structures occur because a problem has been overlooked than because a problem has been recognized but incorrectly or imprecisely solved. You can have the world's best engineering concept and analysis, but if it's not communicated well to the contractor, to the owner, you're going to have issues in construction. It's critical.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can't relay and communicate fairly, then that kind of is one of the things that can go wrong quite quickly as well, isn't it?
It is.
So which soft skills do you think has the biggest impact on a project's success but doesn't get enough attention?
I'll pick 3. I'll start with listening, really seeking to understand rather than to be understood. You have to actively be listening and looking at things from another's perspective, and you need to get their point before you can actually respond. I think listening is very critical and is the most overlooked skill. The next is communication. I'll separate that from listening because I think they're both important in different ways. In communication, it's how we connect, and it's foundational to trust. Communication has to be open, honest, clear, concise, credible, and consistent. And communication is a critical soft skill that most engineers struggle with. The last is partnering, and this is a skill as much as it is a value. It's thinking win-win and collaborating on solutions and coming to the table and finding ways to do the right thing to make the project a success. Partnering is not taking over responsibility when someone else does their job. We all have to do our part, but it's critical when things come up or don't go according to the plan.
Okay. So you mentioned about listening there kind of being the most kind of overlooked soft skill. Well, why do you think that is? Because we can all listen, but we often don't. We often kind of prepare our response before the other person has finished what they're saying and not truly perhaps absorb what they're saying.
I think you've nailed it, Michael. We're trying to think of responses they're going. And I think sometimes we have a bit of imposter syndrome, which we think if we don't have the answer to whatever they're saying quickly, that we're going to look incredible and people aren't going to want to believe what we have to say. I think that's a misnomer. I feel like if you really listen and understand, then you're going to know the right thing to say rather than the wrong thing. You got to get that part right first.
Right, so when clients hire geotechnical engineers, what do you think that they should be getting beyond just a report at the end?
I think you have to ask yourself the question, what do we really sell? And frankly, my opinion is that's risk and how that risk can be managed. I worked on a several $100 million project, and we got to the end of it, and the project manager we had worked for told us we did a great job. I followed up with him after lunch and wanted to get some feedback. He said, "Oh, you did a great job." And I said, "Well, how did you know that? Did you enjoy our reports? What was it that helped you know we did a good job?" And he said, "I never read a single page of your geotechnical reports." No surprise. But you did what you said you were going to do, and you did it on time. And you were responsive when there were challenges, and you clearly communicated the risk and worked to manage them. And that was fundamental for me in shaping an understanding of what we really should provide. Most of our clients don't understand what we do, but they can see if we're prepared, professional, looking out for their best interests, and staying on schedule and budget. Really, Michael, I feel like we are trusted advisors, and technical skill alone is insufficient for success when you want to be someone's trusted advisor. We build trust and become trusted advisors when we do the small things that build credibility and trust.
So in relation to that project, are you happy to share some details with that project?
Well, I'm happy to share a few details. It was for a project along Interstate 15 here in Utah. And we had several challenges that came up. Most notably, it was schedule. It was an alternative delivery project that was design build. And we were moving very quickly to get the job done and meet the schedule requirements. And so coming back to that idea of coming prepared, being responsive, it was critical to the overall project success because time was so important.
So based on or looking back into your experience, what if you can describe a time where perhaps a project has, an issue or two, and it wasn't considered at the time of scoping out and everything, and you kind of had to change track or change kind of how you deal with it and what you do?
So when things come up that are unexpected, the best thing a geotechnical engineer can do is get to the site and get your eyes on the ground and understand what's changed or what's happening. And then being responsive and finding solutions. Once we get the steel on the ground, once the dozers are there and the excavators are there, we're spending real money and we have to be responsive to the challenges. I think there's sometimes a tendency to not want to engage and to make it somebody else's problem, but I don't feel like that creates the type of value that our profession can create. I think engagement and working through it, people appreciate that. And at the end, it reduces our overall risk if we're engaged in solutions rather than trying to wait for someone to point fingers.
Yeah, and a lot of it can also depend on attitude. From what I've seen, myself in the field, when you're kind of expecting some things to happen, maybe it's rock heads at point three or whatever it may be, and then it's completely different. So you thought maybe you're going to get fired trumpets done that day, but now with a rock head or some kind of unforeseen condition, it's completely different, and it's quite easy to think, oh, but you can't, because the problem is still there. It still has to be solved, and an attitude really can affect the person and of course the overall project.
Yeah, we get what Mother Nature gives us and it's in the ground. And I feel like we just have to come to this mentality that we're a team and we're going to get to finding solutions when things change.
So I was wondering if you could share another example but this one where geotechnical inputs such as lightweight fill, which we're going to be discussing the day before Geo Congress, has created real value by saving time, cost, or reducing risk.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I work with one of the best, if not the best, transportation transit communities in the United States. And when I say community, I mean the Utah Department of Transportation, contractors, and consultants. Our community is innovative, willing to take calculated risks, and understands that we have to maintain the trust of the local government and public to be a good investment that they want to invest in. Trust is our currency. So a bit of background here on the project. We had a challenging project in terms of schedule. It was over some soft lake bed deposits. We call it Salt Lake for a reason. And we needed to maintain final embankment stresses below the maximum pass pressures or yield stresses. The contractor came to us with a solution to use lightweight cellular concrete, but it hadn't been used in this application really on UDOT projects ever before. So we started to dig into it and realized that we didn't have any data on its engineering properties. It was going to be a challenge and risky. We went to the subcontractor, Cellcrete, and we started to ask a few questions, and they were a great partner. And at the end, they said, well, actually, Diego said, I want to know the answer. And so we worked together with the contractor, the subcontractor, and the department to dig in and find a solution to develop engineering properties that would work. We also got good critical review from the department's reviewer, so it was independent in nature and able to be critical of what we were trying to do. And the project went off successfully. It saved millions of dollars and months of schedule. And I want to highlight this particularly because UDOT was willing to make the investment and take a calculated risk. They have now been able to use the lightweight cellular concrete technology on a variety of projects that have saved countless dollars, solved lots of problems, simplified coordination, and helped Utah have better and safer transportation faster. And I think it just highlights the importance of innovation. UDOT actually has a standard specification for lightweight cellular concrete now, which is pretty remarkable, meaning that they can use it on a variety, if not all, of their projects. And I think that's quite powerful and a good example of how investments in innovation pay dividends.
Do you feel that there's enough investment in innovation in the industry? Do you feel that we're kind of lacking behind other industries? What's your view on that?
No. I think, and for good reason, geotechnical engineering is slow to adopt new technologies. I feel like as an industry, we could do better in finding their application and exploring them. And I feel like that's the challenge, is how do we as engineers take these technologies and apply them in situations that make sense? And I'll applaud the UDOT Department of Transportation for all that they do in investing in infrastructure and being innovative, because they are serious risks that sometimes don't go great. So I agree with you, Michael. We need to be adopting and accepting innovations and taking risks that are calculated. Perhaps it's using a new technology on a smaller project rather than a larger one, but we need to be exploring that because our value proposition is providing infrastructure at prices that are reasonable and acceptable in timeframes that work for the general public. And in order to maintain that trust, we have to be innovating constantly.
Yeah, I suppose innovation is fantastic, but then I suppose it's who's the first one to actually go and try it out on their life site when they have all the risks involved and they have deadlines and everything else. And someone has to, because otherwise nothing will change. But I suppose that it has to be a consideration at some point.
I totally agree.
So how can geotechnical engineers move away from being reactive to being more solution focused?
I feel like geotechnical engineers can move away from being reactive and find better solutions by coming to events like Geo Congress to learn what others are doing, find out what the researchers are focusing on and why. I think you have to recognize that the life of a sub-consultant means that you're going to have fire drills, pop-ups, and last-minute requests. Our clients usually have one or two problems, but if you've got 5 or 6 clients, now you've got 5 to 10. And so I think you have to just accept that and understand there's going to be some challenges in trying to meet schedule and be responsive, which is why it's so important to plan and to communicate to your clients what the expectations are. There's always going to be urgent requests. So how do we navigate that as a team? How do we cross-train so we can meet them? How do we find a way to deliver when things are challenging and not be reactive? So I highlight that. It's planning, it's cross-training, and it's also being flexible and understanding that sometimes you're going to have to make some personal sacrifices to help projects be successful.
So for those who perhaps are not in a lucky enough position to actually attend Geo Congress, wherever it may be, of course, this year it's in Salt Lake City. Well, how can they access some of the insights and learnings, etc., that will be going on there?
Great question, Michael. The Geo-Institute maintains a very active and dynamic YouTube page, and you'll be able to see most of the presentations, at least the awards that are there through YouTube. It's very powerful. The other thing you can do is purchase the conference proceedings, which will be put together afterwards, and be able to have a copy of those. But I think YouTube is probably the best resource that's available, be able to get up to speed and watch the information that's being presented. If you can't attend in person, you certainly should attend via YouTube.
Yeah, it's a good way. And of course, podcasts like this, of course, that people can listen to, your insights and everything in relation to the conference, but also related to geotechnical engineering, what's worked, some of your experience and stuff. And there are a few different, podcasts around that cover similar topics, ground engineering, ground investigations, etc. So that's a very good way for people to kind of stay plugged in, almost have mentoring, via your mobile phone, essentially. Which brings us on to the next question. So mentoring does play a big role in developing engineers. So how important has mentoring been in your own career?
If I may, I'd like to illustrate this with a story that really changed my life. So I met Ryan Cole with the firm I'm at, Gerhard Cole, as part of ASE Geo-Institute. We were trying to take a geotechnical group and turn it into an institute chapter, and we did so successfully. And we were able to put on several great events and have a good time doing it. And I learned more about Gerhard Cole while I was getting to know Ryan through the Geo-Institute. Gerhard Cole is a small but highly technical geotechnical firm, and certainly at the time was doing good work. Over time, there was an opportunity that came available for me to come and join Gerhard Cole. Someone who was leaving created an opportunity. It was exciting. The problem was the timing wasn't good. And what I mean by that is I had a wife that was pregnant with twins, our first kids. And so I went home and told my very loving, very supportive, very patient wife that I wanted to leave a firm of 90,000 and go join a firm of 6. Not only that, the firm that I was leaving was willing to offer me more money to stay. And what do you think she said, Michael?
Yes, I would imagine. I'd imagine there's a few choice words.
She said, "You better know what the hell you're doing." And my wife is very supportive and she puts up with a lot. And she was willing to support me, but she wanted to make sure that I was going to do my part. So there I was, leaving a firm of 90,000 to go to a firm of 6. My wife is pregnant. And you should ask yourself, well, I would hope you would ask, why did Ryan do it? And I'm going to tell you the answer. I wanted to be a part of something bigger than myself. I wanted to go build and be a part of a firm that cared. And they committed to me, specifically Ryan Cole, committed to me that he would provide mentoring or coaching. And we had a very sharp chief consultant here, Travis Gerber, who was helpful, and Brian Garrett, who's a principal doing good work. But Ryan made a commitment to me specifically that he would provide mentoring and coaching. And that made the difference. I wanted to build my career. I wanted to learn and grow. And I felt like the best way that I was going to do that was through apprenticeship and working with very talented engineers like Phil, Ryan, Travis, and Brian. And so that's what made it make sense for me. Now I came over, and the story doesn't end there. I've been at Gerhard Cole for about a month, and our twins came 6 weeks early. 3 pounds. I could hold them in my hand. Didn't go exactly the way we had planned. And then our twins didn't sleep through the night for almost a year and a half. And that first year was very rough. But I got good coaching, not only professionally, but personally from the people I was working with, and was able to get opportunities that have really changed my life. And I'll say this, good opportunities never come when it's convenient. And I feel like there are times in your career when you need to take calculated risks. You need to find people that are trying to build what you want to build, and you have to go for it and figure out the rest later. Thankfully, I have an amazing wife who is supportive and who made sure and took care of the twins at night so I could focus on my job during the day. And looking back now, it was a challenging but very important part of our life that's returning dividends still.
So risky at the time, but it worked out. And people, of course, you have to take risks at some point, calculated risks, of course, not. But of course, you are proof that it works out, and you probably got a lot more from what you've done and grown from where when you joined the company to where you are now.
Certainly.
So for someone early in their career, what should they be looking at if they want to grow and develop properly?
One of the things that I love about consulting is that it offers adventure and opportunity. And you can fundamentally change your career path in consulting very quickly if you're willing to take on challenging projects. But it takes two parts. So, what I would look for if I was someone who is joining an organization, what I want from my employer is not more that it's got to be more than money. You've got to have a firm that is committed to technical excellence and reputation. You've got to learn. You have to look for an organization that's committed to providing opportunity for their staff and wants to see you grow. And that includes attending events like Geo Congress and being part of professional organizations. I would definitely want to find a company that is doing interesting and challenging work that I think I would enjoy, and a firm that's going to try and invest in me. The most valuable resource any of us have is our time. And if you find, like I did here, if you find a group of leaders and a president of the company like Ryan Cole, who is willing to invest in you in terms of time, that is the most important thing. I learned so much from going to meetings with Ryan, him providing coaching. He still bleeds all over the stuff that I write. And he made time to provide coaching. And so is Travis and Brian, and Phil did as well. And I feel like if they're willing to invest their time in you, then you know you're on the right track. Now, I said there's two parts to it. I want to talk about what the individual must do. There's a law of the universe that in order to get anything, you've got to give up something. So if you want to grow and develop, you have to ask yourself, what am I willing to give up to get that? I think back for a moment about my annual reviews, especially when I first started at Gerhart Cole, and each annual review was, you're doing a good job, you need more experience. I got frustrated with that. How do I get more experience? I feel like I'm doing a good job. And I think the concept at hand is this that I was being taught. And that is that you can get 10 years in experience in 5 if you're working hard. You can get 1 year of experience in 30 years if you're doing the same easy project over and over and over again. I finally made a decision that I was going to do whatever was thrown at me. I was just going to take it on and run with it. And that's how I developed and grow, was stepping outside of my comfort zone and listening and taking notes and keeping track of what I was learning so that I could move forward and apply it faster. And that has been a tremendous secret to success for me here at Gerhart Cole. And I'm trying to pass that on to the next group coming behind me. You can accelerate your career 1 year, 5 year, or 10 years, depending on how you're using your time. And I think that's a powerful concept here because we're all anxious to get on to the great projects.
In that sense, as a great asset. So, I mean, as a recruiter, of course, in the kind of geotechnical and geo-environmental space, we speak to a lot of people, and some people just want more money for various reasons. Perhaps their kids going to college, whatever it may be. But most of it is progression, projects, something to get their teeth into. They want to be challenged more, and that's generally why people then move. So we have a person we speak to them, and because he just doesn't have the mentorship, and he's just thinking, well, where's this going to go in a year's time? I feel like I'm going to be in the same position and not progressing. So therefore, they're looking for a new role. They're happy to take a bit of a pay cut because they are thinking, medium term to long term in terms of their career, where they want to go and what they want to become essentially through that process of doing that. So it's never just about money.
I might add to the discussion here that I am a firm believer in great teams doing great things. And I think you have to look at the team involved. I got to grow up playing the greatest sport alive, and that is baseball. And I learned tremendous lessons about teamwork from playing with teammates who are incredible individuals, and also from coaches that made the effort to provide feedback and coaching. Being a good team player and being coachable are critical. And you want to be on teams where both those things are happening, where you're being coached. And I think coaching actually fits a little bit better than mentoring in the discussion, but as well with teammates that are good teammates and helping you out. And I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to learn those lessons from baseball so I can apply them professionally in my life.
So if you could change one thing about how geotechnical professionals operate today, what would it be and why?
I would pick and encourage us to focus on the positive. We are trained to be critical. We're trained to find fault. We're trained to find what's wrong with things so that we avoid failure. But you have to understand that if we are not enthusiastic and excited about what we do, no one will be. And we have to bring an energy and enthusiasm to what we do to help people want to understand and want to dig into the detail. The other thing I might add, and this goes along with it, is we have to insist on getting the data. Our team here here's the saying frequently, get the data. And we have to go out there and get the data. We can't just say that we're going to make an assumption or use something that doesn't make sense to try and force it in to make it work. We have to go and get the data. But at the same time, we have to remember if we collect data, it has to return value. If we spend $1 on engineering, then it has to return multiples in construction. And that's been fundamental to our firm's belief in how we handle and collect data. It has to return value in construction.
All right. So we're coming to the end of the podcast now, but for anyone attending Geo Congress for their first time, what advice would you give them to get the most out of it?
I've got a list. First, go to the website and do your homework. Identify topics of interest, make a plan for where you want to be and when you want to be there. We have a program available you can download. The second is, and not as well advertised, the Geo-Institute has technical committees related to embankment dams and slopes, earthquake and soil dynamics, and attending those committee meetings can be very valuable and you can learn a great deal. I would encourage everyone listening to join a technical committee and get involved that way. I kind of view it a bit like a rock concert. We get to go and meet our people that we read their papers, we read their books, and I would encourage everyone to go and meet them and talk to them and confirm that they're in fact human. And that will give you hope as a professional that you have things to learn. Shake their hands, ask questions, get to know them. You may be able to send an email with a follow-up question in the future, and that can be very valuable. We're fortunate that we work in a world where people that do what we do are good people. There's not a lot of bad people that are attracted to working in the dirt. And I've found that most of the people at Geo Congress are happy to lend a hand or to discuss something you have a question about. I think you need to lean into meeting new people. The exhibit hall this year is going to be fantastic. And spend time there walking around and see what's going on. And last but certainly not least, don't miss out on the poster session. They're an opportunity to go and talk to people about their posters and their research, ask questions in a very informal environment without the pressure of asking a question in a group, and you shouldn't miss it. Along with the student events, they're a lot of fun, like the Geo Wall competition. How's that for feedback, Michael?
Yes, that is good for feedback. I'm going to ask one quick follow-up question. For those who are perhaps hesitant with the networking side, what tips, hints would you give them? Because it doesn't suit everyone to go into a room full of a couple of hundred people. But what advice would you give?
Great question. If you're nervous at Geo Congress, come and find me and we'll chat. I'm happy to help you feel more comfortable. The next thing I would say is that everyone finds the networking events a bit uncomfortable and you just need to lean into it with a smile. If a conversation ends awkwardly, not a big deal. If you say something that doesn't come out quite right, people understand. We all do it. And I think you just have to go in with a smile and make the best of it.
It's great hints and tips there. So we're moving on now to a feature. It's basically a question from a previous guest. So this question has been written by Chris Woods, who was the previous guest. So we all have one project that we look back on and hold on a special level more than others. What would be yours and why?
So I maintain a top 3 list of projects that I've been involved with. 2 of the 3 are alternative delivery, and both of them are progressive design build, which is a delivery method that UDOT's been exploring and expanding, where the contract mechanism is simplified, that the owner, the DOT, and the contractor have a contract, and we work for the contractor, but we get engaged early and in a different way of bidding. And the project that comes to mind is 5600 South. We had a great project team, contractor, DOT, program management, designers that were committed to making a difference, transparency, which is unique in progressive design build, and partnering. And we had some challenges on the project with working close to some existing buildings and vibrations and some groundwater conditions that were quite challenging in terms of drill shaft construction where vibrations would be lower. And so we had to explore the use of continuous flight auger cast piles, which was the first time it was used on a UDOT structure. And we had to work together to work through the challenges to get the department comfortable with the innovation, what we were doing. They were really great. To get the contractor familiar with it, and we brought in a great subcontractor, Malcolm Drilling. They came in and did a good job. Granite was leading the efforts and helped us put together a drop weight that we lovingly named Satan's Fist because of the amount of weight and how it had to be dropped and the way it looked when it was being dropped. And Granite, as well as WW Clyde, worked together to help us find solutions on the project that made a big difference. And I might say that we did a good job as a team identifying and managing risk, and it was by far the smoothest construction from a geotechnical perspective I've ever been involved with, because the team came together, identified risks early, and put together a good plan and resources so when they came up, we were able to get to solving them immediately. Not everything went perfectly, but things went smoothly and quickly. And I think we can see that in the schedule. They've been able to accelerate the schedule and do great things. Horrocks was very helpful in helping us innovate on the foundations and finding ways to tie them into the structure. It was truly a great team, and we had a lot of fun doing it, which is what this is all about.
Right. Great. Okay. That pretty much takes us to the end of the podcast. Anyone who's listening, watching, if you're liking what you're hearing or viewing, then feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you very much for your time today, Ryan. Most appreciated. The audience will definitely be tuning in and taking in a lot from this conversation. So thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of the Ground Investigation podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you're looking to bolster your geotechnical or geo-environmental team in the US, please do reach out. Well, the link is in the description of the podcast. And also, if you're looking to perhaps change roles in the next few months, perhaps it's for a pay rise, perhaps you're looking for a bit more mentorship, whatever that may be. Thanks very much again for listening. We'll see you in the next one.